The protagonist of our story is a YouTuber with a passion for venomous animals. One day, after being bitten by a black mamba, he suddenly found himself in a fantastical martial arts world. There, he managed to tame the venomous creatures of this realm and even discovered cures for previously incurable diseases. But that's not all. Many surprises await him in this strange world. On a stormy, rainy night in an almost abandoned location resembling old training academies, a group of warriors stands in the courtyard of a deserted mansion. Their leader calls out to see if any residents might be in the area, hoping someone will appear. Amidst the heavy downpour, a child emerges from the academy's gate, standing silently and observing without uttering a word, awaiting the stranger's request. The warriors are taken aback, while their leader pauses to reflect. How could someone possibly live in such a desolate place? Their astonishment deepens when they realize the sole resident is just a child. The leader requests permission from the child to spend the night there, seeking shelter from the relentless rain. The boy, the story's protagonist, hesitates momentarily, uncertain of the stranger's intentions or identities. Despite his young age, they treat him with respect and politeness, leading him to suspect they might think he's a young sorcerer guarding the abandoned academy. The child greets them and senses they don't seem to be bad people. He explains that he has been living in the abandoned academy for years and grants them permission to stay, provided they steer clear of the small wing he uses. The leader thanks the boy for his hospitality, assuring him that his men will respect the condition. Turning to his warriors, the leader instructs them to find sleeping spots within the academy, emphasizing the rule to avoid the young master's wing. The warriors respond in unison, affirming their understanding. The men spread out to organize their sleeping arrangements, while the boy observes them and notices the Tang clan emblem on their clothing. He deduces that they all belong to the same clan, sparking his curiosity about their personalities and motives. However, he sets the thought aside to focus on other responsibilities. Before retreating to his wing, the leader greets the boy once more, and the child excuses himself, heading toward his small quarters. There, he attends to his tiny companions. With a broad smile, he approaches a large ceramic jar, opening it eagerly to reveal a collection of small cockroaches. Holding the jar, he remarks how their hunger must have grown due to his delay. Next, he opens another jar, revealing a large black spider known as the Black Earth Tiger, native to Hainan, China. This spider, characterized by its unique black tiger-like stripes, can grow up to 20 centimeters in length. The boy offers the spider a cockroach to feast on and expresses gratitude for having these creatures as companions in such a lonely place. Watching the spider devour its meal fills him with joy, especially seeing its remarkable growth. After ensuring the spider is satisfied, the boy moves to a drawer, pulling it open to reveal a cave gecko. He feeds it another cockroach, marveling at the unique patterns adorning its body and tail. As the boy enjoys tending to his companions, he is suddenly startled when the gecko bites him, causing him to jerk back in fright. At that moment, memories of his previous life flood his mind. Before reincarnating, he had been a streamer managing a channel with over 1 million subscribers, primarily focused on insects and venomous animals. He recalls the live stream he hosted to celebrate reaching 1 million subscribers, titled The Top 10 Most Venomous Snakes in the World, during which he traveled to Africa to find the black mamba, one of the most dangerous venomous snakes, fulfilling his fans' relentless requests to see it. The memory shifts to his frantic search for the snake during that live stream. He vividly recalls telling his audience he needed a break, but would resume the search shortly. In a last-ditch effort, he even checked the refrigerator, though he knew it was impossible for the snake to be there. The shocking twist occurred when the elusive snake appeared on top of the fridge. As he approached, it struck swiftly, delivering a venomous bite before he could react. He collapsed to the ground, motionless, marking the end of his life. In his final moments, he realized the irony. After all his exhausting efforts, the snake had been within his reach the entire time. Will hears knocking at his door, and it turns out to be the clan leader calling out to him, asking if he is inside. Opening the door, Will asks the leader what he needs. The leader responds that they wanted to thank him for hosting them in such terrible weather and invites him to join them for dinner, mentioning that they had hunted a deer. Will is greatly surprised, and understandably so. He had only ever eaten snake and lizard meat before. Will expresses his gratitude, saying he would be delighted to join them. The leader chuckles at his innocence and invites him along. As the rain subsides, the group lights a large fire and begins roasting the deer in a way that fills the air with a delicious aroma. Will watches the scene with his mouth watering, longing for the taste of meat. Noticing his eager expression, the leader smiles and reassures him that the food will take some time to cook, suggesting they use the wait to chat. Embarrassed that his expression gave him away, Will encourages the leader to ask whatever questions he has. The leader asks if Will lives alone in the Hainan mountain range and inquires about his age. Will replies that he might be 14 or 15, prompting the leader's surprise that he isn't sure of his own age. Will, knowing he can't reveal his reincarnation, improvises a story about falling on his head as a child, leaving him with memory gaps. The leader sympathizes, expressing his regret for Will's hard hardship and asks again if he truly lives there alone. Will laughs lightly and explains that he has no talent or skills and spends his time hunting snakes and selling their skins to meet his needs. The leader marvels at his courage to engage in such dangerous work at his age, but Will responds that he's grown used to it. An elderly man, the leader's father, enters and informs them that part of the meal is ready, pointing out how hungry the boy seems. Feeling embarrassed, Will thanks him and takes a piece of meat, mentioning how long it has been since he last ate meat. Taking his first bite, Will is overwhelmed with happiness, feeling as though the experience is surreal. He eats heartily, amusing the leader and his father with his appetite. They laugh, but their joy is evident as they see him eating well. The leader tells Will that he'd like to speak with him while he eats. Will, mid-bite, eagerly listens, curious about what the leader wants to say. The leader begins by explaining that they are searching for something specific and asks Will seriously if he has seen anything unusual nearby. Will doesn't fully understand what the leader means, prompting the latter to clarify, though he hesitates to find the right words. The elderly man interjects, suggesting that they owe Will the truth since he's sheltered them and poses no threat due to his lack of knowledge and solitary lifestyle. The leader agrees with his father, his expression growing serious before continuing. He tells Will that they are searching for a large worm covered in blue spots. Will is astonished at the idea of traveling such a distance for a worm. The leader elaborates, explaining that the creature is known as the blue-spotted worm, and its size is so massive that Will may have noticed it before. Curious, Will asks just how big the worm is. The leader explains that if the worm is fully grown, it could swallow a person Will's size whole. Stunned by this revelation, Will is left grappling with the realization that this world might be far more extraordinary than he initially thought, believing at first that he had merely gone back in time a few centuries. The elderly man reassures him not to worry, explaining that they've traveled this far with the sole purpose of hunting the creature. Will asks if they plan to capture it for breeding, causing both the elder and the leader to look at him in shock. The elder tries to take the suggestion seriously, but soon bursts into laughter, joined by his son. They find the idea of raising a giant worm both naive and amusing, though undeniably endearing. The elderly man explains that raising the worm is impossible, as their goal is to use it for a cure. Will, surprised by the response, asks for clarification. Initially, he had assumed they were mere traders, but now they seemed more like smugglers or drug dealers. He inquires how a worm could possibly be used as a remedy. The elder clarifies that it's an uncertain possibility, but his granddaughter suffers from a severe illness, and they believe that the worm's internal gem might be the only cure to save her life. Understanding their motives, Will realizes they are driven by a desire to save her. The leader adds that the patient isn't just the elder's granddaughter, but also his own daughter. Reflecting on this, Will acknowledges their desperation to try anything, no matter how uncertain, to save her, because parents would go to any lengths for their children. Despite feeling sympathy for the worm, Will decides to help them out of respect for their hospitality and kindness toward him. Will begins to speak, and the leader asks if he has seen the worm in the area. Will responds that he hasn't, disappointing the leader. However, Will continues with a confident smile, stating that he probably knows where it can be found. He explains his extensive knowledge of venomous creatures, surpassing anyone else's expertise, as it stemmed from his obsession with them, and of course his own death by a venomous snake bite. Will elaborates, pointing out that among millions of species, roughly 20,000 are venomous, and he is familiar with all of them. He asserts that worms are no exception, and could be classified among such creatures. Immersing himself in thought, he delves into his mental library. After an extensive mental search, he finally retrieves the information he needs. He informs the leader that he might now know the exact location of the worm, astonishing everyone present. The leader and the elder eagerly ask him for specific detail. Will takes a moment and asks them about the areas they've already searched. The leader explains that they have looked in the south and east and focused on the riverbanks in the north, but only during the daytime. Will understands why they haven't found the worm. He tells them they missed it because of the characteristics of the location they chose to search. The elder asks him to elaborate, and Will begins to explain, noting that worms belong to the arthropod phylum and centipede class, which are spread over vast areas. He explains that since these creatures are cold-blooded, they require habitats that maintain their temperature and moisture. He adds that what sets these creatures apart from other insects is their waterproof exoskeleton with pores, which makes them favor highly humid environments, though they avoid completely waterlogged areas. Moreover, they cannot survive without access to water. Due to these traits, the blue-spotted worm rarely inhabits forests or riverbanks. The elder is astonished by Will's insights, admitting he had assumed such worms would prefer damp places like decayed wood crevices. Will clarifies that small worms might live there, but giant worms like the one they are searching for cannot survive in forests or river rocks, as they require locations that provide complete concealment. Both the elder and the leader realize their approach had been entirely misguided, and no matter how hard they searched in those areas, they would never have found it. The leader asks Will about the ideal location to find the blue-spotted worm, emphasizing that if he helps them locate it, he will be richly rewarded. Will smiles confidently and gestures toward the campfire, suggesting the worm might be in the Rocky Mountains on the western bank. He explains that centipede-like worms typically hide among rocks during the day and come out to wander at night. At midnight, the leader and his men head to the Rocky Mountain and begin searching for the worm, combing every possible hiding spot. Despite their efforts, they find no trace of it. The leader climbs to a high vantage point, hoping to spot it from above, but comes up empty-handed. One of the men doubts the accuracy of Will's information, suggesting he might have been mistaken. The leader descends and decides to call off the search for the night, firing a signal arrow to gather his men. The team assembles around the fire, exhausted and disappointed, lamenting the lack of results despite their faith in the young master's guidance. They express their frustration at not finding the worm, despite Will's confidence. The leader remains silent, lost in thought, before voicing his sorrow over the dwindling hope of saving Huyan, who had been the most extraordinary talent in the family. The elder suddenly interrupts, joining the group by the fire and asking the leader about the search results. The leader admits defeat, stating that they found nothing, and asks his father if he discovered anything different. The elder, equally dejected, replies that he also failed. He adds gravely that Huyan might only have 3 months left to live and doubts they will find the worm in such a short time. A heavy silence falls over the group, laden with sadness, until the leader suggests searching the southern region the next day, as they found no sign of the worm in the west. The elder agrees, but suddenly pauses, startled by a realization. He exclaims in disbelief, wondering how he had missed something so critical. The leader asks if the elder noticed anything unusual, and the elder responds that there were no traces of the worm or any animals in the area over the past 3 days. The leader and his men are taken aback by this revelation, and the elder explains that the absence of animal activity on the mountain is a strong clue in itself. He speculates that the animals either fled or became prey to the giant worm. Placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, the elder declares with certainty that the blue-spotted worm is indeed on this mountain and that they can finally save Huyan. The leader is filled with joy, convinced that their efforts are finally paying off. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently, throwing everyone into disarray and leaving them unable to maintain their balance. At the fire pit, chaos erupts as the earth fractures beneath them. Sharp shapes begin to protrude from the ground, resembling massive legs or fangs, presenting a dire threat to everyone's safety. Finally, the hidden creature reveals itself, causing panic among the group as they scramble to escape or distance themselves from the danger. The elder, however, remains frozen in place, awestruck by the sheer majesty of the creature emerging piece by piece from the ground until it fully reveals itself, the giant blue-spotted worm. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the commotion caused by the worm reaches Will's ears. Curious, he wonders just how massive the worm must be for its presence to cause such an uproar. Though annoyed that the search has turned the mountain upside down, he also feels a surge of excitement, eager to see the creature himself. After a long and arduous night, calm returns to the mountain. The leader and his men succeed in slaying the giant worm and extracting its gem. Joy spreads through the group as the elder declares that Huyan can now be saved. The leader approaches his father and asks him to return to the village with the uninjured soldiers. The elder, puzzled, inquires about the reason for this request. The leader responds with a cryptic statement saying, "We carve grudges into our blood and kindnesses into stone," emphasizing their unyielding commitment to both vengeance and gratitude. The leader confirms that there are still matters to address on the mountain, and the elder agrees, reminding him that they must thank the young master who helped them. He suggests inviting Will as a guest and offering him a gift of his choice. The leader decides to visit Will himself to check on his well-being and inform him of what transpired, knowing that Will might be anxious to know their fate. Meanwhile, Will wakes up to find himself surrounded by 3 small larvae, puzzled as to how they got there. He realizes he has somehow become the mother of these larvae overnight. He recalls placing the worm eggs on his desk after cleaning them the previous night and is shocked to discover they have hatched. The larvae cling to him tenaciously. When he tries to remove one from his face for some breathing room, it bites him in defiance. Will reflects on the events of the previous night when his curiosity as an entomologist led him to search for the giant worm. He managed to locate its lair and steal the eggs, but stumbled during his escape, tripping over a hand-sized cockroach. Though the fall nearly caused him serious injury, he was relieved the eggs remained intact. He considers himself lucky that the rain had stopped. Otherwise, the mission would have failed entirely. Back at the academy, Will carefully cleaned the eggs and added them to his collection. Though slightly disappointed at not seeing the giant worm, he regards saving the larvae as a significant win. Looking at the larvae now clinging to him, Will pleads for some personal space, but their stubborn attachment frustrates him. In an attempt to solve the problem, an idea strikes him. Head to the water. He figures the larvae might slip off easily there. A mischievous glint flashes in Will's eyes as he hatches his plan. With a sly tone, he declares that he's going to take a bath to reclaim his space. At the same time, the leader arrives at the academy gate. Finding no sign of Will outside, he cautiously approaches and knocks on Will's door, calling out to him. Receiving no response, the leader hesitantly enters the room, announcing his presence loudly. Inside, he finds no one but notices several containers filled with herbs and medicines. This leads him to suspect that Will might be a practitioner practitioner of traditional medicine. However, feeling it improper to invade someone's room uninvited, the leader decides to leave. Just as he turns, a buzzing noise from one of the containers stops him in his tracks. Curiosity piqued, he cautiously approaches the source of the sound. Opening a container, the leader is stunned to see the black tiger spider inside. Hearing another sound coming from a drawer, he moves toward it and opens it to find the striped gecko. The leader is astounded, unable to believe the variety of venomous creatures housed in the room. As he continues exploring, he discovers other containers with beetles, unhatched eggs, and even drawers containing venomous snakes. Realizing that Will breeds these dangerous creatures, the leader is awestruck. Even for the Tang clan, renowned for their expertise in poisons and venomous creatures, this level of breeding and egg preservation is unheard of. Leaving the room, the leader is deep in thought, realizing that meeting the young master wasn't just a stroke of luck for saving his daughter, but an invaluable opportunity to know someone extraordinary. Will's voice suddenly interrupts his thoughts, calling to him from a distance. The leader responds with a greeting, and Will asks about his injured arm, concerned if the wound is severe. The leader reassures him that it's not serious, but adds that there's something more important he needs to discuss. Before he can continue, his expression changes abruptly, as though he has seen something terrifying. He senses a familiar energy emanating from the academy gate. The energy begins to take form, shaping itself into a monstrous figure. Finally, the source of the energy is revealed, a savage-looking individual who appears to be the leader's enemy. The leader shouts at Will, pushing him away and urging him to flee immediately. However, the attacker moves with lightning speed, landing a brutal strike on the leader. He barely manages to block it with his injured arm, wincing in pain as the force of the blow overwhelms him. The attacker unleashes a beam of energy toward the leader, hitting him directly and causing him to collapse to the ground. Struggling to rise, the leader recognizes his opponent's strength, which rivals that of his elder father. He shouts at Will to run, but it is too late. The attacker grabs Will and begins choking him mercilessly, laughing wickedly. The attacker sneers, claiming he heard that the scum of the Tang clan had come to Hainan, and he couldn't resist coming to meet them. He didn't expect to find the son of one of the most infamous poison clans in such a pitiful state. The leader demands to know the attacker's identity and reason for targeting him and the young master. Laughing, the attacker reveals himself as Bloodhand Raksha from Tak Anyang, adding that the leader's father is the reason for his grudge. He gestures to his bloody red fist, a mark of his suffering. The leader recalls the name and remembers the story of Raksha being struck in the head with the poison palm technique and falling off a cliff. The surprise lies in the fact that he's still alive. Furious, the leader shouts at Raksha, demanding that he release Will, as the young master has nothing to do with their feud. He even offers his life in exchange. Raksha mocks him, saying that will only happen in his dreams. He vows that no one from the Tang clan will be left alive. The leader feels helpless, knowing Raksha has no intention of letting Will go. Will, meanwhile, is choking and on the verge of losing consciousness as Raksha tightens his grip, laughing maniacally and clearly intent on killing him brutally and swiftly. In a critical moment, Will gathers his remaining strength and pleads with Raksha to let him go, only to be met with more mockery. Suddenly, 3 pairs of piercing eyes glare menacingly. Will's larvae spring into action, attacking Raksha with fierce bites on his arms and neck. Raksha screams in pain, swatting at the larvae and demanding to know where the insects came from. He initially laughs them off, claiming they are harmless, but his laughter fades as he feels venom coursing through his veins. The pain intensifies, and within moments, Raksha collapses to the ground, succumbing to the venom from the larvae bites. Will stands frozen in shock, unable to believe Raksha has died so quickly from the larvae's venom. He turns to the leader and asks in a trembling voice if Raksha was truly a wicked man. The leader, equally stunned, begins to grasp that Will is no ordinary traveler. He must become a part of the Tang clan. Days later, following Raksha's death, the leader suffers from a high fever and severe exhaustion. Will does his best to care for him, expressing concern for his worsening condition. The leader weakly thanks him, and Will asks where the other warriors are so he can check on them too, though he hesitates to leave the leader alone in such a state without another healer present. The leader assures Will that he will recover after a few days of rest. Will, however, is puzzled by the leader's calm demeanor, despite coughing up an unusual amount of blood. The leader brushes it off, remarking that it's nothing to worry about since he's a martial artist. Curious, Will asks if the leader means the type of martial arts where people can fly or shoot fireballs. The leader laughs, explaining that not everyone can do that, but such feats are part of the general concept of martial arts in their world. Will begins to realize just how different this world is from his previous one, where giant worms and extraordinary martial arts seem commonplace. The leader expresses his gratitude to Will, emphasizing that he owes him his life. He requests to introduce himself formally, despite his weakened state. Identifying himself as Tang Sheol San from the Tang clan, he turns to Will, who introduces himself as Will Soryong. Sheol San translates Soryong to mean little dragon, expressing admiration for the name and its profound meaning. The leader, visibly agitated, asks Will about the larvae clinging to him, questioning if they are indeed venomous. Will confirms, explaining that they are the larvae of the blue-spotted worm. The leader, ignoring ignoring his injuries, springs from his bed with excitement, asking if Will has truly managed to tame the blue-spotted worm. Will tries to calm him down, urging him to rest, but the leader insists on learning how Will accomplished such a feat and inquires about the other venomous creatures in his quarters. Will smiles cautiously, telling the leader that it's a long story and asking if he's ready to hear the whole thing. The leader eagerly replies that he loves long stories, prompting Will to recount how he came to raise the larvae. The leader is stunned by the tale and asks if Will really did all of this by himself, from collecting the eggs to taming the larvae. Will confirms, adding that he can even predict when the eggs will hatch with surprising accuracy. The leader is astonished, marveling at Will's ability to foresee such events, and his admiration for the young master deepens. Will asks the leader for a moment and retrieves a set of lizards from a drawer. He presents them to the leader, showing one ordinary lizard with yellow stripes on its body and another with white stripes on its tail. Then he unveils a third lizard with a yellow body and a white tail, explaining that it is the result of crossbreeding two lizards with prominent white stripes on their tails, leading to this new color variant. The leader, fascinated, examines the new lizard closely and remarks on its unique appearance, telling Will it seems he has truly created a new color. Will shares the leader's enthusiasm, acknowledging the beauty of the new variant. The leader pauses, swallowing hard, before asking Will a serious question. Is it possible to combine venomous creatures with strong toxins to develop a species with even more potent venom? Will ponders for a moment and replies that it is theoretically possible, but extremely challenging in practice. Before Will can elaborate, the leader interrupts, brimming with excitement, demanding to know how certain Will is of this possibility. Then, surprising Will, the leader makes a bold request. He asks Will to join the Tang clan. Will struggles to process the offer, but the leader shakes him enthusiastically, explaining that joining the clan would allow him to learn martial arts and access stores of herbs, medicines, and venoms he might need. The leader adds with great enthusiasm that someone like Will could even capture or raise the 10 legendary venomous creatures known for their unmatched toxicity in the Central Plains. The leader ends his pitch with an intriguing detail. His daughter is one of the 3 flowers of the Central Plains. Startled, Will asks the leader to repeat himself. Laughing, the leader reiterates that his daughter is considered one of the most beautiful women in the region, only to realize that Will's interest lies not in humans, but in venomous creatures. Will eagerly asks about the 10 legendary venomous creatures, wondering if they are as fascinating as the blue-spotted worm. The leader assures him that these creatures are far more incredible, stating that the blue-spotted worm ranks the lowest among them compared to the giant scorpion, the golden gleaming frog, and others with extraordinary ability. Seeing the awe and excitement on Will's face, the leader realizes he has successfully convinced him to join the clan. 2 days later, the leader visits his warriors at their camp. They are shocked when he informs them that Raksha had appeared in Hainan. The leader explains that Raksha had been hiding all this time, honing his skills and strength, and that his current level is nearly equal to that of the leader's father. The warriors are even more astonished when the leader reveals that the one who killed Raksha wasn't him, but the young master, Will Soryong. They stare at Will in disbelief before approaching him with gratitude, thanking him for saving their leader. Some of them even jokingly ask if he is a seasoned martial artist who underwent rejuvenation. Will becomes uneasy with the barrage of questions from the warriors, but the leader steps in, suggesting they let Will explain in his own words. With a faint smile, Will calls out to the 3 larvae, prompting movement within his clothes. The warriors watch in stunned silence as the tiny creatures emerge, clinging tightly to Will. One of the warriors asks why Will keeps such creatures with him. The leader intervenes, explaining that these are the larvae of the blue-spotted worm, the very creatures that killed Raksha. The warriors are even more astonished, expressing disbelief at Will's ability to handle such highly venomous creatures without harm. One of them asks how he has managed to raise them safely. The leader firmly responds, declaring that Will's abilities are exceptional and far beyond those of an ordinary person. The leader emphasizes that this is why he is determined to have Will join the Tang clan, even though Will is still considering the offer. One of the warriors enthusiastically adds that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity Will shouldn't miss. However, the leader interrupts, stating that they must act now and cannot afford any further delays. Will asks the leader if they are still searching for something specific. The leader explains that Bloodhand Raksha had been using a forbidden martial art called Venomous Blood Claw, which requires human blood and bone marrow to reach its full potential. Will is horrified by the brutality of such a technique. The leader continues, noting that if Raksha had any disciples or trainees, they must be dealt with to prevent the art from resurfacing, and any captives must be freed. The leader asks Will to assist them in this mission, particularly because of his familiarity with Hainan Island's geography. Will takes a moment to think, realizing that joining the Tang clan could secure him a prestigious position for life. At the same time, it offers an opportunity to test the leader's character during the mission. Will agrees to help, but insists they wait until the leader has fully recovered. The leader is delighted by Will's decision and expresses his gratitude. Will responds by saying the choice wasn't difficult, given that the mission involves saving lives. However, in truth, he plans to use the mission to to learn more about the Tang clan and evaluate their working environment. 3 days later, the leader, fully recovered, leads the group to a nearby village close to the abandoned academy in search of clues about Raksha. They question the locals about any disappearances or unusual incidents. The village elder, an old man, mentions that 1 or 2 people vanish each year in the forest, but he doesn't think there's any clear pattern or connection in these cases. The leader thanks the elder for his cooperation, and the elder humbly responds that it's an honor to assist the renowned leader of the Tang clan. Despite their thorough search, the group finds no useful information. Will asks the leader if he suspects anything specific. The leader admits he initially thought Raksha had found them because he was nearby, but he now realizes the situation is more complicated than he anticipated. Will, too, finds it strange that there's no trace of Raksha in the area, but he recalls Raksha's words during their battle and arrives at an important conclusion. Will asks the leader if he remembers what Raksha said when he appeared at the academy. The leader, still recovering from the earlier fight, admits his memory of the details is hazy. Will reminds him of Raksha's words. "I heard the scum of the Tang clan were nearby, so I came to see for myself." Will points out that this suggests someone informed Raksha of the Tang clan's location. Therefore, they should investigate everyone who might have crossed paths with the Tang clan during their journey through Hainan, using a sketch of Raksha to gather information. The leader, impressed by Will's reasoning, praises the idea as ingenious and a significant step forward in their search. The team commends Will for his sharp thinking, agreeing that their plan is now much clearer. The team soon arrives at a gloomy and eerie village, its dark atmosphere unsettling. One of the warriors points out that this could be the place they've been looking for. The leader, Choi, confirms that this is the correct location, believing that those connected to Raksha might live here. He instructs his team to enter the village quietly and to interact with the villagers respectfully, as he's been told they are friendly. Upon entering, they notice the village is sparsely populated, and the few faces they encounter appear despondent and unusually fatigued. As they call out for someone to meet them, an old man emerges with a young girl and a few guards. The leader introduces himself, explaining their reason for visiting. While Choi speaks with the elder, Will's attention shifts elsewhere. Will observes that the village seems devoid of vitality. Even the young girl looks frail and exhausted. He notices the villagers' behavior is abnormal, as if they are under some kind of influence or spell. The village elder denies any cases of disappearances or strange events, but he sternly asks Choi to take his men and leave. Choi tries to express concern about the low population compared to the number of homes, but the elder reacts angrily, asserting that it's none of their business. Both Choi and Will are taken aback by the elder's overreaction. Choi attempts to de-escalate the situation, mentioning that Will told them the villagers were kind and welcoming. Before he can continue, the young girl suddenly collapses to the ground. The elder, panicked, kneels beside her, muttering that she's his only remaining family member and wondering why she's fallen ill too. Choi steps forward and offers to examine the girl, explaining that while he's not a professional doctor, he has some medical knowledge. The elder quickly agrees, desperate for help. During the examination, the elder reveals that a plague has been ravaging the village for years, killing children and severely weakening adults. Choi reassures the elder, promising to do his best to help. Grateful, the elder orders the villagers to comply with Choi's requests without delay. As Choi works to treat the girl, Will quietly asks one of the warriors about Choi's medical expertise. The warrior explains that Choi is highly skilled in medicine, as the Tang clan's specialization in poisons naturally led them to excel in medical knowledge. He adds that martial arts require a precise understanding of human anatomy, making the leader well-versed in medical principles. Will is surprised, having assumed the Tang clan was merely a group of assassins relying on poison in battle. He begins to consider the possibility of learning medical arts from them, rather than delving into their terrifying poison techniques. The warrior snaps Will out of his thoughts with a chilling remark, mentioning that the clan sometimes injects poisons into their enemies solely to study their reactions. Will shudders, realizing the dangerous world he's found himself in, and that the Tang clan is far from ordinary. When they reach the treatment area, Choi uses his internal energy to stabilize the girl's breathing by transferring a portion of his own vitality. The elder thanks him fervently, pleading for him to save his granddaughter. However, Choi notices something unusual about the girl's pulse and asks the elder if she was born with heart problems. The elder explains that her illness began a decade ago and that others in the village have suffered from similar symptoms, suggesting the presence of a mysterious disease. The elder admits this was why he initially asked them to leave, as he didn't want to expose them to the danger. Choi reassures him, stating that he will provide them with an effective remedy for heart issues and instructs the elder to gather the villagers so they can also receive treatment. The elder bursts into tears, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking the leader profusely for his efforts. The leader responds with a warm smile, acknowledging the elder's relief. Later, as the leader strolls through the village with his trusted companion Joby, they discuss the patient's conditions. Joby commends the leader's dedication to helping the sick. The leader humbly thanks him and begins describing the symptoms he observed: lethargy, eye swelling, mild fever, and irregular heartbeats, symptoms that seem unrelated yet worsen in patients with severe heart conditions. After a moment of thought, the leader asks Joby about Will's whereabouts. Joby explains that Will had exhausted himself assisting the patients, so he helped him to his room to rest. The leader remarks that it's natural for Will to be tired, given his lack of martial arts training and the considerable effort he's put in. Deciding to check on him, the leader asks Joby to lead him to Will's room. Opening the door quietly, the leader notices something unusual on Will's face as he sleeps. Concerned, he quickly raises his hand and slaps Will's face hard, waking him abruptly. Will jolts awake, clutching his stinging cheek, his eyes brimming with tears. Staring at the leader in shock, he yells, asking why he did that, complaining that it hurt terribly. The leader apologizes profusely, explaining that he didn't mean to hit him, but had spotted a strange insect on his cheek and felt it was too dangerous to leave it there. Will, still rubbing his cheek, asks what kind of insect it was. The leader shows it to him, opening his palm to reveal the bug. Will's eyes widen in recognition as he identifies the insect, but struggles to understand how it ended up here. Piecing things together, he asks the leader to clarify the symptoms the patients have been experiencing, particularly the irregular heartbeats. The leader confirms that irregular heartbeats are a key symptom. Smiling confidently, Will announces that he might have identified the cause of the village's illness. Pointing to the insect, he explains that it is known as the kissing bug, a type of assassin bug named for its habit of feeding on blood from areas around the mouth or eyes while victims sleep. Will elaborates, stating that while the insect itself isn't venomous, it carries dangerous parasites in its gut. These parasites can be transmitted through bites or fecal contamination, causing a potentially fatal disease known as Chagas disease, which has historically claimed many lives. Turning to the elder, Will asks if the village dogs have shown similar symptoms, such as rapid breathing or lethargy. The elder is taken aback by the question, asking if the insect could also affect dogs. Will confidently affirms that the insect is the source of the illness, leaving the elder stunned and speechless. After a moment, the elder, his voice trembling, asks if his granddaughter can be saved. Will reassures him that it's possible if they can secure the right treatment. The leader interjects with a light laugh and asks Joby for his opinion of Will. Joby responds that he now fully understands why the leader holds the young master in such high regard. Will, puzzled by their exchange, looks at them in confusion, unsure of what to make of their admiration. Feeling the weight of their gazes, he grows flustered. The leader shifts the conversation to explain more about the Tang clan, introducing the concept of goo. He describes it as a mysterious organism, considered by some to be a venomous parasite, and by others a magical entity. It's believed to have originated in China and is used by malevolent individuals to torment or control others, forcing them to act against their will. Will is startled by the idea of using goo to manipulate humans and finds it difficult to believe. The leader assures him that goo has claimed many lives, forcing warriors to commit heinous acts such as killing their own children or betraying their families, turning them into slaves to evildoers. The elder collapses into tears, fearing that his granddaughter might have fallen victim to such malevolent forces. Ignoring the elder's sobs, the leader explains that significant efforts have been made to develop treatments for goo. These remedies either expel the parasite from the body or dissolve and kill it within the host. Will hesitates, suggesting that defeating such a formidable creature might not be possible. However, the leader responds with excitement, asserting that the Tang clan is the most capable of achieving such feats. He pulls a small orb from his pocket, introducing it as the curse-dissolving sphere, and explains that just a tiny amount of its substance is enough to eliminate the problem. Will is impressed by the advanced capabilities of the Tang clan, but finds the name overly dramatic for what he considers a mere anti-parasitic treatment. The leader reassures the elder once again, confidently stating that they will save his granddaughter. After using the treatment, the villagers begin recovering, one by one. The elder's granddaughter is the first to fully recover, sparking immense joy and celebration throughout the village. The villagers host a feast to honor the leader and his team, expressing their deep gratitude. During the festivities, the leader thanks Will, acknowledging that without his insights into the cause of the illness, the situation would have been far more challenging. The leader publicly credits Will for their success, prompting the villagers to shower him with praise and thanks. Will feels a sense of pride in receiving such recognition and notices that the leader seems genuinely pleased to grant him this honor. The experience leaves a positive impression on him. During the celebration, the elder whispers to the leader, bringing up a topic mentioned earlier at the village entrance: the mysterious disappearances in nearby areas. The elder recounts a strange story told by a villager years ago about a tragedy where an entire village's population vanished inexplicably. The leader asks for more details, and the elder explains that the village in question lies to the west. After the celebrations conclude, the leader and his team set off for the coordinates provided by the elder. As they approach the site, the stench of death and decay grows increasingly overwhelming. Upon arrival, they are horrified by the gruesome scene. Piles of skeletons and scattered corpses litter the area, with the air heavy with the scent of poison. Joby advises Will not to look, warning him of the horrifying sight, but Will calmly replies that he has already seen it. While investigating the area, one of the warriors notices something peculiar. A brightly colored bird moving freely among the corpses, seemingly feeding on them with ease. The sight provokes a mixture of astonishment and disgust among the group. One of the warriors, angered by the bird's behavior, declares that he won't allow it to desecrate the dead. Ignoring the leader's attempts to stop him, he picks up a rock and hurls it at the bird. The rock strikes the creature, drawing its attention. The bird's eyes glow with an eerie light, startling the warrior, who hadn't anticipated such a reaction. The leader immediately warns everyone that something unnatural is happening. Suddenly, the bird flutters its wings, releasing a dense, strange substance into the air. Will gasps in shock as the surrounding corpses and skeletons begin to decompose unnaturally. The leader swiftly covers Will's mouth to silence him, lifts him, and orders the rest of the team to retreat immediately. He explains that the bird they are dealing with is the Zhenyao, a highly venomous creature. After escaping successfully, the leader gathers the team to explain the nature of the bird they encountered. He describes it as a majestic creature with a wingspan of 5 feet, a bronze beak, and shimmering purple feathers. When angered, the bird spreads its wings and releases a deadly toxin that kills everything around it, turning the area into a wasteland. The leader adds that the bird is known as Zhenyao, the king of poisons, and it is regarded as the apex of venomous creatures. Will is visibly ecstatic, expressing his amazement at encountering such a deadly creature. He remarks that the venomous snakes and insects he's seen before seem almost harmless in comparison. To him, the Zhenyao is like a living, flying biological weapon, and his enthusiasm only grows as he imagines its potential. The leader continues explaining that the Zhenyao bird feeds exclusively on the heads of venomous snakes, which might explain its presence in the area. Will, intrigued, asks whether this bird is common. The leader replies that it is exceedingly rare, so much so that people might live their entire lives without ever seeing one, as it is only spotted once every few centuries. Pondering for a moment, Will suddenly asks if it's possible to capture the bird. The question shocks the warriors, but the leader laughs, asking Will why he would want to attempt such a feat. Will admits his curiosity but expresses concern about the bird's deadly venom. The leader gazes at Will calmly and reveals that there is a way to capture the bird, but it requires mastery of all the Tang clan's combat techniques. He explains that those who achieve mastery in their techniques become immune to all known poisons, including the Zhenyao's venom, making them capable of capturing the bird. Playfully, the leader teases Will, saying that Tang clan laws strictly forbid teaching their combat techniques to outsiders, even if he, as the leader, wanted to bend the rules. Feeling provoked, Will asks excitedly if joining the clan would allow him to become immune to all poisons. The leader confirms this, leaving Will dazzled by the prospect. For a moment, it feels like a dream. The leader adds that if Will decides to join now, he will personally teach him everything. However, if Will continues to hesitate, the offer might not stand for long. Feeling challenged, Will declares impulsively that he wants to join the Tang clan and become the leader's disciple to learn everything from him. The leader chuckles mischievously, then responds that he'll think about it. Moments later, the leader turns serious, placing a hand on Will's shoulder and formally declaring him a member of the Tang clan family. The leader and his team continue tracking Raksha's trail, eventually arriving at an abandoned cave with clear footprints near the entrance. Joby enters the cave to investigate and emerges holding a bundle of papers, which he hands to the leader. Examining the papers, the leader notes that they are written entirely in blood and contain the secret technique for the venomous blood claw, martial art. Will is shocked by the idea that Raksha used his own blood to record the technique. The leader announces that their mission is complete and it's time to return. When Will asks if they are heading straight back to Sichuan, the leader confirms, explaining that they've secured the blue-spotted worm's essence and the forbidden technique, leaving no reason to stay. Remembering the creatures he keeps in the academy, Will requests they stop by to release them back into the wild. The leader agrees, mentioning they can also prepare for their departure there. Before leaving the cave, Will notices something glinting near the entrance. The warriors investigate and discover a feather from the Zhenyao bird. The leader carefully picks it up and hands it to Will as a symbolic gift for joining the Tang clan, especially given Will's fascination with the bird. Will thanks the leader sincerely, but the leader jokes that Will's way of addressing him might need to change after the upcoming celebration. Confused, Will asks what celebration he's referring to, but the leader keeps the details to himself. Meanwhile, the elder arrives at the Tang clan headquarters, immediately inquiring about Huyan's condition. He is informed that she is still clinging to life, though critically ill. Rushing to her room, he bursts through the door with the essence of the blue-spotted worm in hand. Huyan's mother, overwhelmed with emotion, urges the elder to administer the treatment quickly. Carefully, the elder removes the essence from its container and feeds it to Huyan. As the essence's energy begins to flow through her body, the room falls silent, everyone anxiously watching for any signs of improvement. Despite their anxious anticipation, Huyan remains lying weak and fatigued, intensifying the tension between her mother and grandfather. Meanwhile, Will begins to feel the weight of exhaustion after a grueling journey spanning about a month and a half, from Hainan to Sichuan, through Hangzhou and Nanjing. When they finally reach the Tang clan headquarters, Will is awestruck by the grandeur of the main estate, perched on Tang Mountain, which was named after the clan. As they approach, Will hears loud voices and commotion within the estate. Suddenly, the massive gates open, and a large number of warriors emerge to greet the leader and clan head, leaving Will astonished at the sheer size of the Tang clan. He hadn't imagined that so many people were part of the organization. In the midst of the welcoming crowd, Will notices a figure in the background, indistinct at first, but then clearly calling out to the leader. "Papa!" The figure runs toward him quickly. The leader's eyes widen in shock as he sees Huyan, tears streaming down her face as she cries out with joy and throws herself into his arms. Will is stunned. He hadn't expected Huyan to be the leader's daughter, especially with her radiant and positive aura, which contradicted the somber image he had imagined. The leader expresses his joy, exclaiming that Huyan is alive and well again. Huyan, crying and apologizing, clings to him tightly. The leader asks her about her condition, overjoyed at her survival despite his lingering concerns about her health. Will watches the reunion in silence, trying to process how drastically things had changed. He's particularly struck by the realization that the flower the leader had spoken of earlier was none other than his daughter. The leader approaches Will with a smile, saying that he wants to introduce him to someone. He formally introduces Huyan, teasingly pointing out that she's the flower Will had shown no interest in meeting. Will feels a wave of embarrassment, recalling his earlier conversation with the leader when he dismissed interest in flowers, grasses, or anything similar. Tang Huyan, known as the Tang clan's poisonous flower, had carried a heavy emotional burden that she had never shared with anyone. From a young age, she had been dismissed by the clan elders, who believed her only purpose was to marry a powerful warrior of noble lineage. They had pressured her father to take a second wife, though he always refused. Huyan had hidden this pain within herself, determined to prove that her existence was not a mistake. She had worked tirelessly to achieve greatness in martial arts, hoping to demonstrate her worth to the clan. But her impatience to prove herself had led to a disaster, as she pushed her internal energy too far and became poisoned by a malignant demonic force. Huyan awakens from her long coma to find her mother, grandfather, and the clan elders surrounding her. Her mother weeps with joy, telling her how worried everyone had been. Huyan, confused by their presence, begins to recall her memories and breaks down in tears, apologizing to her mother for everything that happened. She confesses that she only wanted to be useful to the clan, but ended up losing all her internal energy in the process. Her grandfather takes her hand gently, asking if she had borne this burden out of guilt for her father and grandfather's struggles, even though she had already reached the 100-centimeter level she had been striving for. The grandfather urges her to stop crying and celebrate her achievement, much to her surprise. Tentatively, she attempts to gather her energy and discovers that it flows more smoothly and powerfully than she ever imagined. Curious, Huyan asks her grandfather what happened, but he interrupts her, saying there's a story she needs to hear first. He reveals that a young man not only saved her life, but also granted her internal energy equivalent to 1,000 cubic centimeters, not just 100. When Huyan sees Will, her grandfather's words echo in her mind. She stares at him silently for a moment, her gaze unwavering. Will feels deeply uncomfortable, remembering how he had previously referred to her dismissively as a weed during his conversation with the leader about venomous creatures. Catching himself, Will steps forward and introduces himself formally, expressing his happiness to see her recovered and in good health. Huyan smiles warmly, responding that she's equally pleased to meet him. She introduces herself as the poisonous flower of the Tang clan and thanks him sincerely for saving her life, promising that she will never forget his kindness. Will gazes at Huyan, captivated by her beauty and radiant demeanor. Suddenly, he hears the leader's voice in his head through telepathy, asking him what he's thinking about. Shocked by the intrusion, Will freezes, but the leader continues teasing, suggesting that Huyan might be a bit slender but is undeniably beautiful. He then slyly asks if Will wants to get to know her better. Embarrassed by the leader's remarks, Will doesn't know how to respond and decides to take a warm bath to shake off the fatigue from the journey. In the bath, Will observes his tired, battered body and notices his 3 larvae unusually resting quietly. Normally, they never leave his side, but he remembers telling them earlier that warm water could harm them and asking them to settle in the water bucket instead. To his surprise, they had obeyed him immediately, almost as if they understood him. This triggers a curious thought. Do these creatures truly understand him? He recalls Leader Choi's explanation that larvae respond to strong intentions or signals, especially related to danger or aggression. Will jokingly tells the larvae that they're embarrassing him by always watching, even while he bathes. The larvae emit a soft chirping sound and return to the bucket as requested, leaving Will chuckling at their obedient and endearing behavior. Reflecting on Joby's earlier comment about the larvae being spiritual creatures, Will resolves to learn more about their nature and uniqueness. His thoughts drift back to Choi's remarks about Huyan, making him uneasy. Will decides he needs to tread carefully, and even considers leaving the clan's estate soon to avoid any complications. In the Tang clan's meeting hall, the clan elders gather for an important discussion. Leader Choi announces his decision to grant the eastern wing of the estate to Will. The elder grandfather, skeptical, questions if Will truly possesses the talent and skills to merit such treatment. Choi firmly defends his choice, explaining that their initial encounter was a struggle stroke of luck, but after observing Will's abilities, he recognized him as a treasure too valuable to lose. He elaborates on Will's unprecedented expertise with venomous creatures, his defeat of Raksha, a disciple of Tak Anyang, his encounter with rare spiritual beings like the Zhenyao bird, and his successful raising of larvae hatched from blue-spotted worm eggs. His words leave Huyan and her mother stunned, while the grandfather chuckles in admiration, likening Will to a priceless gem. Then, Choi surprises everyone by announcing his intention to marry Will to his daughter, Huyan. Huyan, taken aback by the sudden proposal, struggles to process it. Needing time to think, she remains silent, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. She has always strived to prove her worth to the clan, yearning for recognition through her own accomplishments. With newfound determination, Huyan responds firmly, stating that as a member of the Tang clan, she understands her father's reasoning. However, she asserts that the decision is hers to make. Her voice rising with emotion, she declares that only she will decide if Will is worthy of her. She abruptly leaves the room, leaving everyone stunned by her outburst. Choi watches her departure calmly, remarking that Will need wisdom to navigate this situation. He notes that while Huyan is a beautiful, poisonous flower, she comes with sharp thorns like claws. Huyan, now fully attuned to her newfound internal energy of 1,000 centimeters, decides it's time to evaluate Will's character and qualifications personally. Meanwhile, after finishing his bath, Will relaxes while watching the sunset. He reflects on his current predicament, unsure of how to handle the situation, especially since he suspects Huyan might be angry with or even dislike him. Seeking advice, he jokingly asks his larvae for guidance, but is startled when Huyan suddenly calls out his name loudly. Approaching him with a determined stride, Huyan requests a private conversation and hastily asks him to extend his hand to her. Confused but compliant, Will holds out his hand, unsure of her intentions. As the silence stretches, he grows increasingly awkward and nervous. Finally, he blurts out that he doesn't understand the urgency, pointing out that they've barely spoken for 5 minutes and that such matters usually require time, thought, and meaningful discussion. Huyan's eyes widen in surprise and embarrassment as she realizes Will has completely misunderstood her intentions. Her face flushes red with a mixture of frustration and humiliation. Angrily, she shouts that he's got it all wrong and that this isn't what she meant at all. She demands to know how he could think of such a thing.